Hi, I'm Steve, and this is my journey through loneliness. From the outside, you'd never expect someone like me to go through profound loneliness. I came from a big family, 3 brothers, constant energy, conversation, and movement. I was popular in school. I modeled for Ralph Lauren after college. I had close friends, and I never had a problem meeting women. But at 54 years old, I hit a level of loneliness I could never have imagined. Not because there weren't people around me, there were. But because the life I'd built, everything I believed would define my future, was gone. I was alone. It was like a death. But before I take you into that darkness, let me set it up for you. I got married at 29. Before that, I was raised with family values and a faith tradition where you serve God and family, where men protect, provide, and produce. And I did that. My wife and I had 4 amazing children. I strived, built, failed, tried again, and finally succeeded. I created a company called Compendia, and it took off. The proverbial overnight success 10 years later. At one point, we were clearing $90,000 a month in profit. That's after expenses, after payroll. We were winning. Then one day, it all came crashing down. My wife of 25 years said, "Get a lawyer. I want a divorce. Get out." I didn't want it. I didn't want to hurt the children. What would be the last 6 months of our marriage, I moved into my office building, sleeping there. I had to sneak out early mornings to shower at the gym so I wouldn't be discovered by my employees. Brutal. Still, I tried to work on the marriage. The plan was to have ongoing counseling, but she only came once. That was it. The writing was on the wall. I didn't want the divorce, not because I was particularly fulfilled in the marriage, but because I believed in the covenant, the promise, in my duty, and again, my children. I had held up my end, not perfectly, but I had. I provided for my family. I paid for 3 weddings. I funded college for our children. It was a joy to do at the time, and it gave me a sense of healthy pride in my work and my place in the world. I gave it everything I had. And then just like that, I was out. The first holidays were so sad, so lonely. Thank God for my dog, Max. Friends chose sides. Church friends disappeared. I realized those relationships were relationships of proximity. People looked away in public. My closest community, gone. Then came the twist. The surprise. I got a bid to sell Compendia for millions of dollars. I had achieved the dream, right? But with it, I lost my team, 60 people, some with me from the early days, gone. I had money now, but not my family, not my community, not my purpose and roles I'd served in for decades. Instead of a joyous celebration over selling the company, achieving the goal, I fell over the finish line, burned out. I couldn't think straight. I didn't know what to do next. I was hurting so bad. I was terrified. I asked a friend, weeping, "What will become of me?" I shook. What followed was my own 7-year journey through the wilderness, literally and figuratively. I bought 40 acres of land in the Sierras and built a cabin and lived there part-time. I was in suspended animation, burned out. I had skin rashes, eczema for the first time in my life. One morning, I woke up in that dreamy hypnagogic state and thought my arm had been cut off. As I lay there in the early morning light, I could feel the blood spurting out of my shoulder. That's how deep the somatic distress ran in me. I was 30 to 40 pounds overweight. My blood markers were in the red. I didn't know who I was nor what to do. I started to feel my feelings. I couldn't escape them. Loneliness wasn't just absence, it was grief, anguish, distortion, like falling into a hole, like being forgotten. I had to grieve the death of a life I had built, of my identity as I knew it. That was painful. It made me angry. I also feared this would be my condition forever, that I would make bad decisions. I did make some. And this would be the time people could look back and say, that's the time Fabry went off the rails. Eventually, like a thunderclap, one day standing in my rented home, I realized I have a self to care for. I had been caring for everybody else all my life. This was new. This was a breakthrough, an epiphany. And so I reoriented myself. I slowly began to learn to care for myself as if I would be alone forever. I prepared not in despair, but in resignation and preparation. And over time, I would grow to mine the gold from solitude, to experience the difference between loneliness as isolation and sweet solitude. I tended to my body, trained in Krav Maga, a martial art that came with a community I was part of. I bought a sauna and jacuzzi. I sat in silence. I journaled. I tried multiple modalities of therapy. First CBT, then EMDR, breathwork, Burning Man, and many more over many years. I came to realize that in my marriage, I had become a workhorse, treated like an ATM, a sperm donor. And yet, paradoxically, while serving in this way, I also felt fulfilled. I was caring for my family, put a roof over their heads, food in their bellies, shoes on their feet, and a path forward for them to launch into their own lives. Only afterwards did I feel used so intensely. CBT had value, but I found it lacking. It didn't go deep enough to the source of my issues. What ultimately helped me was psychoanalysis, real analysis, where you see your unconscious for what it is, and you own your part in the pain. Not just what was done to you recently, but how early childhood conditions malformed me. And that's where my life started to shift. I began to see more clearly what I had been doing, and equally importantly, what I'd been avoiding within my own self. I was also forced to confront my relationship with faith. I'd been raised in an institutional framework, but had a genuine relationship with God. And yet in my darkest night, no institution met me. Rote answers and exhortations fell flat. One church acquaintance reminded me that the Bible has a sentence that says God hates divorce. That burned in my gut. Of course God hates divorce. I hate divorce. And it hurts the children. It hurts us. It's financially damaging, socially crushing. But divorce happens. And it's not always a bad thing. In some situations, it's the only way forward. So let's stop shooting our wounded, shall we? Over time, I moved from being a rule-following supplicant begging for rescue to finding God here and now in each and every moment. Over time, my faith moved from a cognitive exercise to an embodied knowing. And I became an expression of the divine, present to what is, a moment-by-moment awareness of God's presence. I am so grateful for the divine in my life. And of course, as a single fellow, I dated. My CBT therapist advised me not to marry right away, to meet a lot of people, see who likes you and who you like. And then there were the dates. 277 first dates over 7 years. Not many second dates. I came to believe I'd never marry again. That's another death. As the saying goes, divorce is the gift that keeps on giving. But I had needs for touch, for encouragement, for companionships. Most dates went nowhere, but I learned something from each one about myself, my expectations, my trauma, my longing. I learned that I needed to upgrade myself, that I was getting in my own way, and I experienced there was a lack of quality, high value women to choose from. The 277th date, that's the one that changed my life. Along the way, I found my voice. I started writing. I wrote a book. I began speaking more openly about things men don't traditionally talk about: trauma, loneliness, fatherhood, failure, and the way through all that. And I decided to double down. I committed to healing not just the pain of divorce, but my primal wounds, the early stuff, the boyhood deficits, the self betrayals. I began to see reality more clearly, and that process changed me. My blood work results went from red to green. My weight dropped 35 pounds. I got fit. I learned how to sublimate all this pain in my life into life giving activities, healing and growth, love and work. I realized that pain is a part of life and anxiety is just an emotion. It doesn't have to own you. That not knowing doesn't mean you're doomed, it means you're alive. I stopped fearing uncertainty. I cooperated. I opened up to reality as it is, including the uncertainty, including the pain. The reality was my life sucked then. I saw my OCD tendencies clearly. I outgrew them and stopped letting them run me unconsciously through psychoanalysis. Over time, my way of being shifted from robotic rule following to spontaneous, purposeful living. And I became happier. I remember one day waking up thinking, I didn't have my pain this morning. It would return. That was the beginning of being spontaneously happier as a steady state. I went from unconscious, distorted relationships to choosing someone worthy and showing up worthy in return for them. Listen, it's not a straight line. I haven't arrived, but I'm light years ahead of where I was. If I could go back to the version of myself, to the version of Stephen, pain-stricken on the ground, laying there in the fetal position, clutching his gut and head, the Stephen who asked, "What will become of me?" I'd kneel beside him, place a comforting hand on his shoulder, and say, "You're good. You're going to be fine. You can be better than before, better than you ever imagined. Promise. Not quickly, not easily, but you will be okay. Trust me. Nothing stays the same, and you're going to like where you're headed." Every man asks, why do I need to go through hell before I receive what's promised? I ask that. There are lessons that loneliness has to teach you, that pain has to teach you. Lessons you don't get until you allow the pain to do its work. There's a saying I like: pain is a thorny back beast and difficult to ride, but it's the only one that knows the way home. So, my friends, sit with the pain. It will transform you as it breaks off maladaptive parts. And the pain, it's birth pangs. You're becoming something more. And one day, when it's taught you all it has, you'll stand in uncertainty's cloud of unknowing and be okay. Not because you've figured it all out, but because you've become okay with not knowing. Because you're finally present to yourself in the reality of life right now. We don't know what's coming tomorrow, and that's really okay. And when you do that, you see you have options. So if you're watching this and you're in the dark feeling what I felt, sorry that you feel that. But I want you to know there's an end to suffering. There's a way forward, a way out of the woods. And by the way, speaking of ways, you don't need woods to have your own wilderness experience. There are options. There's a door number 2. This is not the end. It's the beginning. You can do it. Fight the good fight. You are not alone. God is on your side. Me too. In closing, ask yourself not, what will become of me? But What do I want to become? That's where it all begins. The recovery, restarting, and the resurgence. Good luck. Go get 'em. This is Stephen Fabry on Boomers and Xers Untaught Podcast. See you next time. Please share, like, subscribe, and more. Thank you.